one of the first topics I want to talk about is what President Trump said recently, homegrowns are next. And I'd like to enter into the record an NPR story. Homegrowns are next. Trump hopes to deport and jail U.S. citizens abroad. I was happy to hear your acknowledgement that that is not legal, but I am curious about the reconciliation bill and the appropriations requests that you will make. Will any of the funding, either through appropriations or through reconciliation, be used to execute this policy idea of Donald Trump's, which is deporting U.S. citizens abroad?
We have not deported any U.S. citizens, and so that false media narrative that you've heard out there just simply isn't true.
Well,
what I would say...
So my question, yes or no, will the reconciliation or appropriations be used for that?
The reconciliation dollars that we've asked for is $175 billion that will be focused and is reflected
but
in
yes
what the
or no,
president
will it be
released.
used for those purposes which Donald Trump acknowledged?
We're going to continue to use the authorities and follow the Constitution to implement policies.
All right,
that will
reclaiming
make sure.
my time. I'd like to now focus on U.S. citizens who were deported. In fact, 3 children so far, likely more children. One of those children with cancer who was deported without the medication necessary to address that child's cancer. Again, a U.S. citizen. The lawyers have said that they were not given, the family was not given an opportunity to make plans for the kids. And so they were deported, essentially, again, U.S. citizens. I have a question about the forms that ICE is supposed to utilize when engaging with parents who have children, the parents who are being deported, and the U.S. citizen children. One of those forms is ICE Form 71-078, or the Caregiver Designation at Arrest form. Were any of the individuals who were deported, who had U.S. citizen children deported with them, were they given an opportunity to sign that form?
When these, the specific cases that you're referencing with these children, it was the parents' choice to take their children with them.
Did ICE
which it is the
follow
policy
through
of the
on the
Trump
policy?
administration to keep families together.
Ma'am, reclaiming my time. I told you at the top of this, ma'am, reclaiming my time. I said that the questions are really simple, yes or no. Was that form used in any of those cases?
I will get back to you on that specific form.
Perfect.
I don't know the number, but I do know these mothers went on the record.
The second form, ma'am, reclaiming my time. Ma'am, please, ma'am, reclaiming my time. I'd like you to avoid the filibuster so I can get to all my questions, please.
Answering your questions.
So the second ICE form that I'd like to ask you about is ICE Form 71-76, which is also it's pre-removal parental interests election form. Can you get back to me on that? Were all of the parents allowed to sign that? Are the parents allowed to speak to lawyers before they're deported, or to speak to their U.S. citizen spouses before they're deported?
They are given the opportunity.
Okay, so you can guarantee that every one of those parents.
We followed all the normal policies and procedures.
So they were allowed to talk to a lawyer.
Exactly
That's a yes.
as it is authorized.
Is that a yes? That's a yes.
Everything was handled appropriately and correctly.
But did they all get to talk to a lawyer? Okay, reclaiming my time.
Under the policy.
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, I'm out of time. I have a number of other questions we'll get to in the next round. Thank you. I also wanted to ask you about this NBC News story, and I'll enter into the record this article as well. U.S. citizen family traumatized after ICE raided their Oklahoma home in search of someone else. And according to the local affiliate, KFOR, which was reporting on this story, immigration agents raided the home last week. They had a search warrant for the home, but the suspects listed on the warrant were no longer living in the home. The family was forced to wait outside in the rain during the search. A mother and her girls, all U.S. citizens. Their money was taken, their laptop, their cell phone. I asked you at the top of our first round if you believed it was important for DHS and if you would attest to the fact that DHS needs to rectify any mistakes. If this were a mistake, will you ensure that this family, this U.S. citizen family, gets its property back in a timely manner?
Well, in that particular situation, the warrant for that situation was on the house and the facility, not on the individuals that were there. And so that house was being used for human smuggling. And so those
a
operations
prior,
were conducted against the facility. And even in that situation, there was some individuals there with the same last names and some of the similarities.
But
And
if
so
it
we
were a
are-
mistake,
we are
Madam
continuing-
Secretary,
we
if it
believe
were a
everything was
mistake.
done appropriately, and we'll continue to make sure that it is done and handled appropriately.
All right. Well, appreciate you looking into it. That not my constituents, but you had mentioned in your testimony, and you've said previously, that the focus of your agency is to go after the worst of the worst, people who are here illegally. But we have seen reporting and spoken to individuals, we meaning Congress, that in fact, there have been abuses on that front. People with legal protections have been deported. I laid out in the first round U.S. citizen children. I don't know, and I asked, and you said you'd get back to me about whether parents actually filled out the ICE forms that are normally used for those processes. U.S. citizen families with nothing to do with human trafficking, and now DHS employees as well, in my view, have been subjected to an abuse of power. And we all swore an oath to the Constitution. This is a democratic republic. Rule of law is important, due process is important, and ultimately that will be my North Star, not just in this hearing, but throughout everything that I work on as a member of Congress. I thank you, Madam Secretary, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.